This is going to be a tutorial on making a basic REST API with Express.js and Node.js code all written in JavaScript. A little bit of background: REST APIs are used all across web development, and it's just a style of API creation which allows you to send requests and handle requests by sending them to a server, and the server will respond with some sort of usually JSON object, and that's how microservices work in large applications. It's how most websites work, and all that's good stuff. So when you want to get into web development, it's very important to understand REST APIs. And in my experience, it was very challenging to find a good tutorial on making REST APIs. That's what I'm going to do today, is I'm going to try to fill that gap. Requirements for this video: I'm going to be doing this tutorial as if you are on macOS or Linux. The only difference if you're on Windows is going to be installing Node.js, and all you have to do is go to the Node.js website and follow those instructions. As far as some background, you got to have some basic understanding of programming concepts like variables, loops, functions, yada yada, and we're going to be writing our code in JavaScript, so a little bit of experience there. REST APIs are super easy, and as long as you follow along what I do, you'll have a functional API which you can learn from and expand off of, and hopefully get a good start going in web development. So the first thing we're going to do is install Node.js. So you're going to want to open a terminal. I've got Tmux running over here, but you can use whatever terminal you want. And if you're on Mac, you're going to run brew install node. It's going to tell me it's already installed, but for you, this is probably going to take a little bit. You can pause the video as your installation finishes. If you're on Linux, you're just going to run apt install node. Same thing's going to work, or whatever your package manager is if you're on a different distribution of Linux. So now we're just going to make a directory, and we're going to call it API. Then we're going to cd into our directory. And now in here, we have to initialize our project. So now that we have Node installed, we have the Node package manager, npm, installed as well. And so we're going to run npm init -y. That's just going to initialize our environment. And as you can see here, we've got some output, and I'll show you what JSON is, what the package.json file is created for our environment. So now what we need to do is install our dependencies. So like I said, we're going to be using Express and Node, but we already have Node installed, so now we just have to install Express. So we're going to use the Node package manager again and say npm install Express. That installed Express for us. It's got everything ready. Now we can go ahead and start typing our code. So in your terminal, you can type touch index.js or server.js, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to use Vim as my here, but you can use VS Code, you can use Sublime, Notepad++. If you really want to get crazy with it, you can use whatever you want. So I'm just going to say Vim, we'll call it server.js. So now we have our JS file. So now we have to start writing our code and get everything set up here. So we're going to go ahead and require Express. So we're going to say const express equals require Express. So that's just going to import Express and create a variable for it and require it, and that's going to do all that good stuff. And now we're going to, this is just kind of the boilerplate for Express. We're going to make an app variable and set it to calling Express. And then we're going to set our port to 8080, but you can set it to whatever port you have, whatever port you want to run it on. It just has to be a port that you have access to. This port is just going to be the port that the server runs on locally. So the first thing we're going to do is create our first get route. So a get request is a type of request that a browser or app or something will send to your server. And we need to build the part that handles that request. So we can do this simple Express syntax to make an endpoint at just the home page or the index page or whatever of our server by just typing /. So that's just going to be the URL of our server. And then we have to have a callback function. So our callback function is going to take a request matter, and it's going to also take a response, and then it's going to give us a status. So we're going to say response.status 200, and that's going to be our success status. And we're going to send say message this is the index page. So now we actually have to get the server running, and then we can test it and see if this is actually working. So we're going to say app.listen, and that's just going to get our app started here. And it's going to take our port as the first argument, and then it's going to take a callback function, just like above, and we're going to console.log. We'll just say server running on port. And now we can run it. So what I'm going to do is open up another terminal node, server.js, if we really wanted to. So let's do that. So now we're going to get the message server running on port 8080. So that is what we want, right? So now we're just going to check that it's actually working. So we're going to go to localhost 8080. And there we go. We've got our message displayed. So, all right. So the first part of our API is working perfectly, just as we want it to. So the next thing to do is build another type of request that's going to be a little bit more complicated, just so we get the hang of what we're doing. So the next thing we're going to do is handle a post request. And this post request is going to take an ID. All we're doing here is showing how you can pass parameters through your URL. So let's go ahead and do that, and we're going to say app.post this time, right? Because we want to handle a post request, and so we need our string path. And just to show how paths work, we can throw in a different path here, and we can say home/ID, and you're going to need this colon in front of your parameter name, and so that's our URL. Or our path. And so the next thing that we need is our handlers, right? So like we said, we need our request, response. We're going to set our status and give a message, but the important thing here is now we have to get the information from our request. So there's going to be this ID passed in the parameters, but the special thing about a post request, which you'll often use for logging in and stuff, you can pass a parameter anywhere in a GET request or something, but it's going to be visible in the URL. So that's obviously a security flaw that can be taken advantage of really easily. So all we have to do is use a post request, and we can embed the information in the request in a way that is not visible in the query. Our actual values here, so we're going to say const ID, and we're just going to pull it from our request. So it's going to be in our parameters. So we'll just say ID is equal to rec. And so now we need to get we're going to call it name. We're going to say const name is equal to, and now we have to pull this from the body of a request, because it's, like I said, it's not shown in our request parameters, in our URL parameters. So we're going to say request.body. We're going to say if not name. So if there is no name supplied, then we're going to set the response status to 418. Then we're going to say send, and then we need our message. Just like before, but we're going to say we want to handle the case that we do have all the information that we need. So we're going to say res.status 200 like before, and we're going to say send. Here we're going to say name is his name, and ID is ID. Now we want to test it, but we can't just go to the URL, because how do you pass in the body? So we're going to go ahead and stop our server, and just to show you, we can run it again, and now we can go back to our localhost 8080. We see our GET request still works. So now let's go to home, there is no home. Okay, so what if we do home slash, remember we have some sort of problem here. You can't specify a post request in your browser. You need some sort of other tool. But in the meantime, we're just going to stop our server here, and we need to make sure we have installed brew. So you can say, or not brew, curl. So you can say brew install curl, or you could say apt install whatever. But it should be built into your machine already. So we're going to get our server running. I wrote that command out wrong. Node server.js. And now if we run this command to send a curl request, so basically this is going to send our post request with our content specified, we're going to get this big error. And it's going to say cannot destructure property of name. And if you go through and do some debugging, it'll confuse you, and it's going to tell you that the request body is undefined and all that. But really all we have to do, and you're just kind of going to have to trust me here, is put this line, app.use express.json. So all that's saying is basically this is building in the functionality to our app to handle JSON and be able to parse it. So if we just save that, and then we'll restart our server with the new changes, and we will resend our request. And look at that, it works. Message, name is Stefan and ID is 13. Works perfectly. We can, just to show you I'm not doing any, fake magic here, we can change it to like Joe. And why don't we change the number to maybe like 7. Look at that. Message name is Joe and ID is 7. And if we want to show our error message at work, we can just get rid of our name in our body and then say, we've got our message, hey, we need a body, or I believe we had something else, but I made an edit to it. So yeah, perfect. We've got our messages working. We have our app properly handling our post requests, and we've learned how to actually test a post request with curl. So this is pretty much all you need to get started. You understand how to build basic requests, or to handle basic requests. You understand parameters. You understand sending information within the body of a request. You understand responses, and you understand, getting your server running. From here, you can look up the different types of queries. You can look up, or the different types of requests, rather. You can look up, like what the different response codes mean, or what's appropriate for different things. You can build in a database, but this is all you need to get started. And this hopefully has been a pretty straightforward introduction. So yeah, from here, just experiment and happy learning, So from here, you can just continue to learn and experiment on your own and build your own cool apps. And if you build anything cool, let me know. I will leave the code for this in the description of the video. Yeah, thanks for watching.